Okay, Yankee fans, I know yesterday was a rough day, but please, I beg you, show some self awareness.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I'm your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now, and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball and Blue Sky, Sully Baseball Podcast on the Instagrams. And today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. You can start the season with a bang. Get a return on FanDuel. If you place a $5 bet, you'll get started with $150 of bonus bets. If you win your first $5 bet, visit FanDuel.com to get started. Hey, there are some people who are in the live chat. Hey, Jeff Cohen, is my sound sounding okay? Again, I'm getting used to my brand new mic, and I'm trying to make sure you all can hear me just fine. All right, let's get down to it. Okay, there's still an amazing seismic aftershock with the signing of Juan Soto. And Juan Soto, of course, went to Jeff Cohen's Mets after going to, spending last year as a member of the New York Yankees. And it's tough to argue with what he did with the Yankees in his 1 year when the Yankees rented him from the San Diego Padres. Here's the deal. To the exact shock of no human beings on the planet Earth, he went to the highest bidder. This is, in many ways, the least shocking event I've seen ever in baseball. It became clear when he exploded on the scene. If you like war, if that's your stat of choice, he led the National League in WAR at age 22, when most players are getting drafted out of college. Maybe they're in double A at 22. He led the National League in WAR in 2021, leading the league in on-base percentage and in walks, homering 29 times, having an OPS of 999, and playing and finishing the second runner-up in the MVP vote. At that point, when most kids his age are graduating and maybe getting drafted, he was already in his fourth year, led the league in WAR, had a World Series ring, was a World Series hero, had led the league in OPS the year before that, and the Washington Nationals offered him a 15-year deal to say, hey, have your entire prime here in Washington. And he said no. He wanted to, probably at the advice of Scott Boras. And by the way, if Scott Boras managed podcasters, I'd want him as my agent. He said no. I'm gonna, without saying it, by turning down the contract with Washington. The organization developed them. The organization won a World Series championship with. By turning down the long-term deal, and that was a smart deal for Washington to make. It would have been like something like $400 million, which now sounds like something you get at a bargain bin for him. But they were saying, hey, we'll buy out your entire prime, stay here, which seems to be a thing that more teams are doing. Hey, you're our star. We're going to buy out your prime years early so we don't have to worry about you going to a free agency in your prime. Bobby Witt Jr. said yes. Mike Trout said yes. Julio Rodriguez said yes. A lot of big stars say yes. And sometimes it works out great. Then you have the Wander Franco situation where him being a scumbag human being kind of got in the way. But that's that is a risk you take. But there you go. And Washington did the same thing with Juan Soto. And the minute he said yes, or the minute he said no, It was clear he was going to test the waters of free agency, as is his right. As much as Washington fans love what he did, Juan Soto doesn't owe he does not owe the fans of Washington a damn thing. Nothing. He delivered a World Series title. He delivered thrills and championships. He matched the total number of World Series titles that the city of Washington had had in their history. It was 1924, and then it was 2019. And he did so filling in the void left by Bryce Harper, another person who was a superstar, young, and said, I'm going to test the waters, as is his right. And he went off to Philadelphia because they were the highest bidder. Went over to San Diego, cost the Padres a bunch of young players, helped the Padres get to the League Championship Series, was clear he's not going to sign a long-term deal, so the Yankees rented him. And at this point, Yankee fans, this is where I have to say, I'm going to give you a mulligan for yesterday, today, and maybe through the week. But at one point, you're going to have to come to grips with a couple of things. You have to understand that everybody knew he was a rental. We all knew he was a rental. And if the Yankees wanted to sign him, outbid the Mets. Now, as it's turned out, the Yankees were very aggressive. And they apparently offered him it was something like 16 million and 16 years and 700 million. It was something that was comparable to what the Mets offered. But the Mets offered more. And I've been saying this whole time, it's very easy to re-sign Juan Soto. Find out what the highest offer is and offer $1 more. And off he went. As is his right. He's off to the Mets. He's going to have the rest of his prime with the Mets. Now, you're probably going to have 5 more superstar seasons, maybe 5 pretty good years, and maybe 5 years where you're paying for the previous 5. But if the Mets wind up winning a World Series title along the way, it'll be worth every penny. Think of that, Met fans like Jeff Cohen. Imagine going through life knowing you don't have to worry about whether or not you're going to see the Mets win the World Series. But I do not want to hear Yankee fans, and I've been hearing it, even our good friends, Locked On Yankees. I heard this on the call-in shows, but the idea of the Monument Park meant nothing to him. The Yankee tradition meant nothing to him. The bleacher cold meant nothing to him. It meant something to him, but not the most amount of money. I'm sure he liked his time in New York. I'm sure he liked his time with the Yankees. But let's not kid ourselves that he owed the Yankees some sort of loyalty. If there was any loyalty or anything that was owed, would have been probably to Washington. But I don't believe in that. I don't believe in loyalty. As Jeff Cohen so brilliantly said, Yankee fans question Soto's loyalty like owners are loyal to the players. Exactly. Owners will trade away players who want to stick around, hose players left and right. Get the biggest pile of money you can. Now, if he wanted to stay, there are some players who left money on the table. Mike Trout wanted to stay with the Angels. Aaron Judge wanted to stay with the Yankees. But it's not like they're clipping coupons for what they signed for either. So let's pump the brakes a little bit on talk about the loyalty. But here's where I say you have to be self-aware. First of all, why do you think Juan Soto is going to feel great loyalty to a team he played on for exactly one season? Reggie Jackson played as many seasons with the Orioles as Juan Soto played with the Yankees. Louis Tiant and Jacoby Ellsbury were Yankees longer than Juan Soto was. He played as many seasons with the Yankees as Kevin Youkilis did. Why would he have this great, oh my God, the team that I was traded to before my free agency? He's played in the World Series, not the team he won the World Series with. I thought it would have been cool if he re-signed with Washington. We all knew he was going to sign with the Mets. There's a guy out there who's spending money like Richard Pryor and Brewster's Millions and knows that he has to win a title with the Mets. He has to take that proverbial monkey off the back, just like the new ownership knew they had to do that with the Red Sox in 2004. And if it meant outspending the Yankees like the Red Sox did when they went and bought a championship in '04, there's nothing wrong with buying a championship. But why would he have that loyalty? And by the way, Yankee fans, and this is where I'm saying you've got to be a little self-aware. For literally generations, the thought has been that the Yankees buy all the stars. Going back to Babe Ruth, and through the years, what loyalty was Catfish Hunter supposed to have for the A's, the team he won all those championships with? He signs with the Yankees. Was anyone talking about Mike Mussina's loyalty to the Orioles, Reggie Jackson's loyalty to the A's or to the Orioles, Rich Gossage's loyalty to the White Sox or the Pirates, Dave Winfield's loyalty to the Padres, David Wells's loyalty to the Orioles? Remember, he was an Oriole before coming to the Yankees. Anyone worrying about that, or Jason Giambi's loyalty to the A's, or all the trades that the Yankees forced because other teams had to dump salary, like they happened with A-Rod, like what happened with Ricky Henderson, like what happened with David Cohn, like what happened with that scumbag John Wetland. Remember Jimmy Key, one of the most underrated figures in the Yankees' first championship of 1996, or the most recent championship? Where was his loyalty to the Toronto Blue Jays? For years and years, the Yankees have gained for the lack of a better term, have reaped the benefits of players seeking the riches of the ports. And for like the second time in their history, it's happened against them. And what thin skin they have. And this is for a native New Englander. And I know the Red Sox bought the '04 championship, signing Ramirez, forcing trades for Pedro Martinez and Kurt Schilling for pennies on the dollar, signing Keith Folk. I understand that. And I love that they bought the championship. It was fabulous watching them buy a championship. And I'm here in Los Angeles. They love the fact that the Dodgers bought a championship. But Yankee fans, championships have been bought for the Yankees, and not even just in free agency. You're talking about 27 rings, this or that. A big chunk of those rings took place in the mid 50s through the mid 60s when the A's were in Kansas City and basically run as a minor league team for the Yankees, where they would develop players, trade them to the Yankees for their junk, and then when they broke down, they would trade them back to the A's for more young players. And why did they do that? Because the person who owned the A's, Arnold Johnson, also owned Yankee Stadium. So it behooved him to have the turnstiles going at Yankee Stadium. So those two teams worked in collusion. And I think you can point direct there. They got at least 2 World Series MVPs out of that. And you got your Don Larson, you got your Roger Maris, you got your Ralph Terrys, you got a bunch of players who built and flourished those championship years. There's no musical called Damn Brewers. The idea of the Yankees spending money, being the big bad bullies, buying everyone, has been going on before free agency. So for once, a player who has played as many years, who has played one more year with the Yankees than me, said, I'm going to the highest bidder, something he made clear 3 years ago. And you're going to talk about how he's betraying you, or whether he should have wanted to be part of Monument Park or whatever nonsense you're saying. A Monument Park that features Roger Maris, that features Reggie Jackson, that features well, actually doesn't feature Alex Rodriguez. I was going to say Alex Rodriguez should feature Alex Rodriguez. Players who have been snatched from other teams because of their deep pockets. I'm saying, please, I'm begging you, please be self-aware. I will never, ever, ever criticize the Red Sox for buying a championship. I criticize teams for not buying championships. But Yankee fans, you can't act hurt. This has been the Yankee legacy for literally generations. Hey, let's talk about FanDuel. Get ready to take on the NFL with FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So if you got a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play by play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit fanduel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's fanduel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the National Football League. I know not every Yankee fan is going to be pleased with me, but there's no microscope to detect how little I care. Um, who's left? I mean, that's the Yankees have to do something. Now, the last time something like this happened wasn't quite as bad, although it was one that was stung a little bit because it was a homegrown Yankee, homegrown world champion Yankee, was when Robinson Cano left for Seattle, and the Yankees knew they had to do something, and they countered with signing Jacoby Ellsbury, which is one of the single worst free agent signings maybe in the history of baseball. Um, Corbin Burns and Max Fried are still available. It may behoove the Yankees to just build up their pitching staff, build up their starting staff and be able to do that. I see Alex Bregman available. I don't think Alex Bregman, I like Alex Bregman as a player, but if he's going to be the person who's going to fill in for what Juan Soto did for the team, then I think you're in for a rude awakening. Pete Alonso, the same thing. I mean, Christian Walker is a nice player, but I don't see any of those players being a giant addition. By the way, I have to say we can't get on Hal Steinbrenner and we can't get on Cashman because they did aggressively try to bring Soto back. But that doesn't mean they have 700 million to throw around like, like that scene with Don Amici and Cocoon throwing money around. I wouldn't deep cut with that because I already went to Brewster's Millions. I mean, probably what's going to happen is they're going to have to spread their chips around the table. And instead of trying to sign one giant free agent, they may just have to say, all right, we're going to try to get a good infielder. Adamas off the board really hurt because I thought the Adamas would have been a good fit. Um, and I think Christian Walker is probably their best fit at first base. Um, I think they need to get another outfielder who can play center field. I mean, if they go acquire Jock Peterson or Anthony Santander, I mean, they'll probably get two good players and two okay players, but maybe act like the 2021 Braves and make sure there's a major leaguer at every spot. Um, and this is no pressure on Jason Dominguez, who's going to have to play the role of the big time bat the way that Juan Soto filled in after Bryce Harper left. But it is interesting. The Yankees have to do something. They have to counter move. And I think there is no great, big, huge star. The biggest star I think available right now is Corbin Burns. Now, if they sign Corbin Burns, I think that's a good move. If you do the top of the rotation, if you have Luis Heel and Garrett Cole and Corbin Burns at the top of your rotation, um, that's good. That's really freaking good. And maybe, Rodon, who had a bounce back season last year, maybe that could continue to happen. Not sure what you're going to get out of Nestor Cortez. Marcus Stroman's probably going to be dealt. Maybe Clark Schmidt, who, pitched pretty well. Tube U points out that he keeps hearing Bellinger's name. Sure. Sure. I don't think any of these are going to make anyone forget about Juan Soto, but that's kind of that's almost the point to be like, all right, you're not going to replace Juan Soto. So don't get someone to fill in holes, fill in gaps. And that could be the smartest thing they can do. Now, have we seen that Cashman is capable of doing that? The biggest moments in the last two World Series since the collapse of 2004. So in the last 20 years, the Yankees have won two pennants. And both times they've won the pennant because they went out and brought in a major superstar. In 2009, they brought in at the same time, they brought in CC Sabathia and Mark Teixeira. They also brought in AJ Burnett, who pitched well in the playoffs for them, especially in the World Series. So that I include that as well. But the main thing was bringing in Sabathia, who was the big fish in that year's free agency, and Teixeira was not that far behind. Well, they brought in Garrett Cole a few years ago, and then they brought in Juan Soto last year. When we've seen them trying to fill in the gaps and play supermarket sweep, it hasn't always worked for the Yankees. And if you're a Yankee fan, you're feeling a little nervous about that because you're going back to trusting Cashman, the GM, and Boone, the manager. But let's stop talking about New York teams for a second because there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams who should be looking around right now and saying, hey, wait a minute. Maybe we should do something. Okay, folks, let me tell you something. The way the baseball playoffs are set up right now, it allows for some teams in the American League who are not necessarily great to get a really good shot at it. Now, last year, the American League Central had the worst team in modern baseball history, the Chicago White Sox, who finished 41 and 121. Every other team in that division had a winning record. 3 of the 5 teams in the American League Central made the postseason. The Cleveland Guardians got to within 3 games of the World Series. Detroit Tigers nearly made it to the ALCS. And Kansas City played the Yankees tough in those 4 games. There were some close games there. And the Minnesota Twins had a winning record. There is no super team in the American League. None. The Astros are still very talented, but they're thinking about maybe dismantling part of that team. Maybe Framber Valdez is going to be traded away. If I'm an American League Central team, I'm looking and seeing, wait a minute, the Yankees got a little wounded. And if Corbin Burns signs elsewhere, the Orioles got a little wounded. And the Astros are thinking about, maybe they'll lose Bregman and maybe they'll trade away some players. If I'm the billionaire owner of the Cleveland Guardians, I'm taking a long look at who's left and saying, wait a minute, we have a chance to win. There is an open field to getting to the World Series. I keep hearing Yankee fans talking about it's the easiest road to the World Series. Well, what if those Central tries to make it a little tougher or goes for it themselves to go on that spending spree? They've got money. Every owner has money. Cleveland has one of the richest owners in all of Major League Baseball and is always in the bottom of the salary pile, which should get more people angry than the Dodgers signing big players or the Mets signing big players. Rich owners signing big players should be the norm. Rich owners not signing big players should be mocked. And for Cleveland, who retained Shane Bieber and still have a good team, remember they won 92 games last year. 92. They should be going for it. You see Detroit, who are making some moves here and there. And of course, they made a giant leap to get all the way to the playoffs. And they signed Alex Cobb the other day. Maybe they should be kicking the tires saying, hey, we'll trade for Framber Valdez. We'll put together that star rotation and put together a team in Detroit. We see that Kansas City's heading in the right direction. They lost 100 games a couple of years ago, and then they won 86 this year, and they have a legit superstar in Bobby Witt Jr. Maybe you slap together and see what players are still available, and maybe Kansas City goes and signs someone because the American League is wide open. The Phillies are a super team. The Dodgers are a super team. The Mets are a super team, and you can argue Atlanta is. There are four terrific teams in the National League. There's not one team in the American League at that level, which means putting together a 93, 94 win team might be enough, which means I'm looking right at you, Anaheim. Right at you. It's been a decade since the Angels have played a playoff game. And if Mike Trout comes back, and as I said, he should at this point be a first baseman or a designated hitter because the guy can't stay on the field. We are at the back nine of Mike Trout's wonderful Hall of Fame career. And they have money. They have piles of money. And they've already been very aggressive this offseason, signing Kikuchi, signing some other players that I wasn't necessarily expecting them to be going after. The Angels they brought in Kikuchi, they brought in Kyle Hendricks. Why not go after Corbin Burns? Why not? Why not try to bring in, they brought in Jorge Soler. They brought in, they just signed Dakota Hudson. Not that necessarily he's a great player, but, he was someone who was an all-star caliber pitcher a few years ago. I guess 2019, but still, Angels, you are playing in a league where it's not going to put them in, you don't have to put together a super team. If the Astros are going to take a step back and the Yankees are going to take a step back, then take a step forward. You're not going to go sign the Juan Soto. We understand that, but hey, Cleveland, you've got money. You already have a good team. Fill in some gaps. Bring in like one or two more hitters, one or two more professional hitters, and sign a major league starting pitcher to go with that bullpen. Then you don't have to wear down to the nub like they did this year. If you're Detroit, you're sitting on the Cy Young Award winner and an exciting young ball club. Go off and sign a Santander. Put him in the outfield. Go out and kick the tires on Max Fried. You have a chance. These teams have a chance. And if you're the Angels, you have a chance to be relevant. You tossed away the combination of Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani because you couldn't put a mediocre team around them. If the Yankees have taken a step back, and it is difficult to argue that they haven't, and if the Houston Astros may lose Bregman and think, maybe we should trade Kyle Tucker and Framber Valdez, then why wouldn't a team see this as an opportunity to say, well, if no one else wants to win this, and let me tell you, if an unlikely team goes and wins a World Series somewhere along the line, even if it means bad times later for the fan base, that championship can have a ripple effect of that generational moment was that, oh, yes, at least we had that. That's what happened with the Royals in 2015. That's what happened with the Rangers just 2 years ago. And yes, that's what happened with the Nationals. So let's go for it. Some team in the American League could wind up being Baltimore, could wind up being the Seattle Mariners, and we'll talk about them later. But if you're the AL Central, a division that already has 4 teams that had a winning record last year and 3 playoff teams, 3 in that division, 3 teams with 86 wins or higher in that division. Would it kill you to spend some money? You don't have to spend money like the Juan Soto deal. That's off the table. But see what's available. You know what? There isn't that great, huge Mongo signing. But at the end of each year, haven't we found that it has been sometimes the move that got under the wire that pays a huge dividend? Yes, the Shohei Ohtani signing was magnificent for the Los Angeles Dodgers, but Teoscar Hernandez was under the radar. When Ohtani was hurt in the playoffs, who picked up the mantle there? Well, Freddie Freeman did. But Teoscar Hernandez was the one who got some huge hits in that World Series. And he wound up driving in 7 runs with his 2 home runs against San Diego to get him into the NLCS. And it was Tommy Edman who later was able to drive him into the World Series. It's not always the moves you think. All right, but as Jeff Cohen says, are you saying that baseball is not in financial trouble? Of course it isn't. They're talking about expansion. Okay? You don't expand a business that's failing. But AL Central teams and the Angels, get off your butts and contend. And Yankee fans, guess what? This is called your own medicine. And it tastes like crap. You can be angry, of course. You can be frustrated. Yep. But please be self-aware. So follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or whatever it's called now and on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Blue Sky, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Talking about the aftershocks of the Juan Soto signing and wondering, how will the Yankees and some other AL teams respond? This has been Locked On MLB. What the hell day is it? The 9th day of December, 2024. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.